Really pleased that you've all made the effort to come along. Really do thank you very much on behalf of both Douglas and myself. It's very pleasing to come to another of the rather beautiful towns that we've got in Suffolk. And I say this deliberately because Brandon, as far as I'm concerned, is just as important as the rest of Suffolk. And I always said when I was privileged to be elected that every place counts just as much as the other. So I know sometimes people say when you're up here, well, it's a bit out on a limb. Well, you know, we could say that about other places. So really pleased to be here, and they're still coming in through the door. Well, that's even better. So we'll get on quite quickly. And I thought we'd just, as I often do, start off with a Winston Churchill quote, "Let us go forward together." And the reason we say that is because your views, your thoughts, your comments, constructive criticism will always be very welcome. This is not some kind of sanitised address where we carry on as before. So if you've got real concerns here, we've got Douglas and his team, Dave here and Andrew and Matt. Please ask whatever you like and we'll do our very best to answer them. It's all about holding the constabulary to account, but in a constructive way so we can make the place better for you. There's no point in us coming here and trying to ignore things. That's not what it's about. We do need to hear if you've got issues or comments, so please feel free when we've done the presentations to ask whatever you like. So very quickly, the role of the PCC, I've been elected for just over 18 months. Representing the public interest, in other words, the new system without the police authority which was abolished. It is down just, I suppose, to one individual. I am supported by an excellent team that I've got, and some of them are here tonight. It's really to act on your behalf for making sure the constabulary respond to what you need. And the other big advantage of this reform is we're able to customise and localise what happens here, not only in Suffolk, but right down to a district level, as opposed to being told by Whitehall, this is the way you will do everything throughout the whole country. And I think that's a major reform that's very important. Setting the strategic direction, there is a very clear divide. Douglas and his team and the constabulary do the operational side. A PCC, Police and Crime Commissioner, does not interfere in operational matters. That's very important. Some people were worried 18 months, 2 years ago, you might get some maverick PCC, and you can make your own decision about that. I'm not trying to do anything on that. That they would come along and say to the Chief Constable or an Inspector, go and arrest this person, I don't like this, don't like that. That is not what it's about. What it is about is getting this police and crime plan sorted out with the constabulary, the bottom point here. That is the customised version. What are our needs here in Suffolk? What are your needs here in Forest Heath and so on? Really important, that big change. So you set the direction, the priorities, and overall it's PCCs who are in charge of the budget. You delegate a lot of that function to the Chief Constable, and you decide to set the level of taxation. So that is something that the PCC has to do on your behalf. Generally speaking, the democratic process is a better way of doing things. It's not perfect. Like old Churchill said, our system is not brilliant. The trouble is everything else is worse. So we have to reflect on that and how we move forwards. The other major thing that I think we really do need to make progress on, and we've already started, is second point, last point there, working with partners to prevent and reduce crime. There is no way the constabulary would ever do all that on its own. But getting people like yourselves, be it local government, district, county councils, the voluntary sector, organisations such as Neighbourhood Watch, Farm Watch, all these other things are vital components of trying to reduce crime and how we bring up our youngsters and so on in a proper, civilised, law-abiding way. 4 main objectives in the police and crime plan. It's all online, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Responding to emergencies, solving crime. Obviously, that's something that we need to do. Preventing and reducing crime and antisocial behaviour. Antisocial behaviour, of course, has a wide range of activities, from louting about to littering, noise, all sorts of things. Speeding, some would argue, is antisocial behaviour, and I would agree with many people that it is. All sorts of things like that. And in a decent society, a tolerant, liberal society, you care for victims. Big changes coming up to that in October. And for vulnerable people, be they young or old, whatever the background, it doesn't matter. If you're over here and you're paying your taxes and everything else, you have just as much right to be looked after as anyone else. Big part of this new role is to consult and engage with the public. First year we had over 1,000 emails and letters. The last year the police authority didn't even have 50. There's been quite a sea change in what's been done. We have monthly surgeries. You can book an appointment for half an hour, 45 minutes, if you've got a particular issue you want to discuss in private. Absolutely no problem whatsoever with that. That's really important. You are able to say what you like in complete confidence. That is another big change. We do quite a lot of engagement seeking your views. Business crime survey. Speeding was a major thing we did last year, and I'm really pleased to say that the Constabulary has used the results of that survey, where we had over 2,000 responses, people's huge concerns. It wasn't so much about the A11 or the A14, but speeding in areas and towns, villages, outside schools, hospitals, where there are more likely to be problems. People need to understand that if you want to start speeding and acting a hooligan and you get caught, well, you get your comeuppance. It's not meant to be a draconian system, but people do need to be aware that how they behave and drive on the road has a fundamental difference. So we need to get that in perspective, and we're going to keep doing that, because that's what you want, and that's what you'll get. The control room, there was no way I was going to support that. Having looked at the case list and advice from financial officers and so on, I'm convinced that was the right decision that we keep our control room here in Suffolk. It's part of our identity. I'm a very proud Suffolk person, and I've been deeply, deeply touched and humbled by the huge range of support we've had right across the political divide, but from all sorts of different people, and I'm really, really appreciative of that. Doesn't mean we haven't got challenges, of course. We have got to bridge that funding gap, and we're all working, Douglas and I, extremely hard to look at ways of saving money and making ourselves more efficient. The regular public meetings we have in each district at least once a year. There are many other meetings I go and speak to, so if you've got a group and you want me to come along and talk with you or whatever, please contact us, and as long as we can fit it in the diary, I will try and fit that in, no problem at all. The business community, that's really important. I have a firm belief if we don't get the economy going, we don't have the tax base, the opportunity for our youngsters to get employment or other people who are unemployed, and we need to be focused on doing what we can to support the business community, because that is how this country is going to start getting out of the financial difficulties it does have. Very pleasing, 92% of people feel safe in Suffolk in a recent survey. One of the new things we're doing, launched here tonight in Brandon, we're analysing the correspondence we have and looking at the major issues we've had. This is over the whole of Suffolk. Not surprisingly, in the first few months we had a huge amount of correspondence about moving the control room to Norfolk. But the other issues, the top other four there, were about roads policing, speeding, that sort of thing, road user behaviour. Quite interesting that roads policing is really high on the agenda, so speeding, but other behaviour, bad driving, is also noticed. Police officer action, that tends to be very occasionally, if members of the public feel they haven't been treated correctly or discourteously, but it's more to do with responding to incidents or if there have been problems in a locality and so on. And one of the good things about this new system, we can take that into our office and get a response turned around pretty quickly. So it's a much more, I suppose, a much speedier and flexible system. And resources and visibility, there again is something we need to do more on the communication side. We do have a lot of police officers, a lot of work, but patterns of crime are changing. A lot more is done by looking at a screen. We were talking about this earlier, internet, cyber-enabled crime, and we've got to respond to this. And part of the responsibility of the Police and Crime Commissioner is to make sure people in the constabulary have the resources and the training in order to do this. We still have big issues to deal with: serious sexual offences, domestic abuse. Some of these crimes are not immediately visible as you walk down the street. It's changing. So we've got to anticipate that and work collectively for dealing with that. And then just coming quickly to an end, some key actions that are important. Operation Galileo, we've got 2 new rural crime teams focused entirely on dealing with rural crime, of which of course hair coursing is one. We need to remember that I think it's 99% of people caught hair coursing have got previous criminal convictions. They're unsavoury, unpleasant, we don't want them, clear off, and if you want to come and mess with us in Suffolk, we're going to be geared up to sort you out. And that has been really successful this year. Recognition of business, the crime unit, the economic crime unit has been expanded with more capabilities. The A14 summit we had back in February, much better relationship with the Highways Agency, and we need to make sure we get our fair share of resources in Suffolk and not the rest of the country. I'm not terribly interested, and I don't mean that in a parochial way. Suffolk is in a region that is a net contributor to our economy, and I think we need to get the resources back here that we deserve. And I'm not convinced government of any colour has recognised that, and that's one of the roles I have on your behalf to try and put that forward. We've had investment in some specialist officers. I mentioned domestic abuse, serious sexual offences and so on in the last 2 years. Delighted to be able to put money in to rolling out the cadet scheme across the whole of the county. There's one starting up, I think, in Mildenhall very soon. Douglas and I went down to launch at Sudbury a few weeks ago. Give our young people a chance. There's some fantastic youngsters about. If we look after them and nurture them, give them the opportunity, they will become much better citizens as they're older. And we all have a responsibility to jolly well do that. So it's a great, great scheme. I was up here last week where there was work with the cadets, the army cadets, and some, well actually they were all girls, so pupils from Lowestoft Academy over here in Thetford Forest on a week's course. Fantastic opportunity for them, and many of them have never had that opportunity in their life before. So if we can do things to help, that's great. Special Constabulary, a real big thank you to those, as with any other volunteer. These are true volunteers who do all these things for helping to keep us safe for nothing. Fantastic people, and we would be very much poorer without the effort and time that they give, as I'm sure we'd all agree. Getting involved with academia, for example, we're doing a county-wide survey on domestic abuse, how prevalent it is, what are the causes, the effects, the barriers. We will then be able to use that, give to the constabulary, this is the problem, quantify it, we can allocate resources in a better way. And we're going to be doing more on that. We're doing a business crime survey as well. And each month we have a priority. Next month, for example, it's about tourism, which is a very, very important part of our economy. It's worth getting on for £2 billion a year in Suffolk as a whole. Hugely important up here in Forest Heath. And obviously industries like horse racing and so on, defence, are other things that are vital. Final part, the Community Safety Grant. We ring-fenced £700,000 of taxpayers' money, in other words, yours and my money. Range of activities supported there, mainly in the voluntary sector. Dealing with drug testing is a bit of a scourge on society, but we can't ignore it. We've got to find ways of dealing with it. Neighbourhood Watch, Community Speed Watch, very keen to support that. You know, the resources are there to help, so please get in touch with us if you want to do that. I've mentioned about young people, and again, those who are disadvantaged, the trials service for, I don't know, you could say youngsters who've got into trouble. If they've been involved in drug and alcohol addiction, we need to point them in the right way to try and help them get over that. We have to do that because the cost of crime and dealing with crime is way more expensive than in preventing it in the first place. And without trying to moralise on that, we have to put things there in place to deal with that. And then finally, I've mentioned about the spending. We've got the budgetary gap to look at that we're working at very hard. Collaboration, I think there are huge opportunities, and it's not just about Norfolk, across the public sector, blue light services, many, many things that we need to do. We're all under budgetary pressures, but we do need the public to get behind, saying to people, where you've got commonality of functions, be it, I don't know, fleet management, procurement and so on, for goodness sake, start to put things together, mean it, so we preserve what we all want, which is the top quality services on the front line. We do need public opinion to get behind that. Victims commissioning, PCCs take responsibility for that in October, and at last we're going to have much more focus nationally on the victims of crime, and that is really important. That's quite a step change. And then to help with the community fund, some of that money has been given to the Suffolk Foundation, so it's called the Safer Suffolk Fund. It's not new money, it comes out of this, where they'll be able to work with other agencies. Sometimes they'll be able to multiply the money. They've got the professional expertise to do it, so I hope that will be a lot more effective. Now I'll hand over to Douglas.
Is the microphone working okay? Can you hear me at the back? I've only got one slide, but being a Scotsman, I think I can pad this out to about 9:30. I promise you. It's much easier if the national team doesn't make it. It's a lot less stressful. It's only one slide for me because really you want to hear from your local commanders. That's the primary focus from tonight. A few things I wanted to cover, but I think the first one is about the constabulary's ability to get behind the police and crime plan, and I think make quite a significant difference on the basis of that. In general terms, you live in an area, one of only probably about 11 counties in England and Wales where Last year, the crime rate continued to fall. Now, I suspect there are things you want to talk about tonight, but if people are not reporting crime, it's very difficult for us to deal with it. So let's get that known about, and then we'll start to tackle it. But certainly in terms of reported crime, down by over 7% last year. And some of the things that really trouble communities saw big drops. House break-ins down by 24%, robberies down by 17%. So these are big falls, and I don't believe there are lots of people not telling us that their home has been broken into. So collectively, something is really working. We need to lock on to that. It's great to see colleagues here from the District Council, County Council and the panel, Crime Prevention Panel. They'll know me from days of old. I was here as an inspector in 1996. This way of partnership working is a real classic example of how to make a difference. There are some particular areas, I think, which haven't had the benefit of real focus in the past, and together with Tim, genuine difference has been made. One is business crime. Tim and I do venture into many business forums, and it's actually now a pleasant experience because we've got the communication, we've got the issues, and they're feeling the presence both of the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and of the Constabulary. The other one that's always been challenging for us, I think, is the one that Tim raises about rural crime. Quite often the properties are very remote, they're very large, businesses, but things like addressing hair coursing, fuel theft, plant theft, metal theft, being attentive creates an environment where people tell us about the very information and intelligence that makes a difference. Crime trends are changing. My second bullet point is about fraud and social media. For many of our frontline operational colleagues, they are dealing with less housebreaking, less car crime, but what they are dealing with increasingly, vulnerable people on the internet, where these scams are particularly damaging, and we've got to push some of the messages that really do protect people. If you're interested, and I encourage you all to be interested, Action Fraud has got a tremendous internet presence. Whether you're an individual or a business, go onto the Action Fraud website, pick off a few pointers, you will make yourself significantly safer. Linked to vulnerability generally, the Constabulary putting a focus into some areas where we think we can prevent even further crime and disorder. Alcohol, the county's got a brand new strategy to address the damage that is caused by alcohol, some of it in public places, some of it very much evident through domestic abuse. Mental health, if I had some of our frontline officers here tonight, they would talk about maybe 25% of their business being people suffering from mental health, either as victims, sometimes as offenders. They actually don't need a criminal justice solution, they need treatment. Sometimes they're just sufficiently distressed that they come into contact with us, but we're really trying to do lots about that. And also troubled families. You know, people who worked on the crime prevention panel will know that if we invest in some families, we stop that generation driver of crime. The big thing I'm strong on within the Constabulary, because we don't have targets, neither from Tim nor from central government, is that we've got room to deal with what matters to communities. And there should be that dialogue with communities, and then it should make a difference. And I'll just reiterate the example that Tim gave. It was very, very clear from last year that we had to do something different in terms of driving standards and in terms of speeding. And our response is now significantly different. Resources are working in a different way as a result of your feedback. We'll also do the same in terms of antisocial behaviour, some new legislation coming down the track that we think will be particularly effective. Last couple of comments from me. The first one about collaboration. Collaboration is just a means to an end. It's not why we exist. We exist to be Suffolk Constabulary, but we do get resilience, we do get the use of extra resources, and sometimes we can actually save money by working with our neighbours or indeed working with other agencies inside the county. So we do work with neighbouring forces. We'll no doubt touch on that as the evening goes on. But we put a big focus here in this county. So not so much here as yet, but if you visit other places, you'll see police officers in the same building as fire and rescue, more effective, less money spent on buildings, and those two big public services available in one location for the public. Future planning is the very last thing. There's no point trying to avoid it. The budget will shrink and our establishment will probably come down. And we need to plan for that, but keep the outcomes the same for you, our communities. So it'll be a bigger emphasis upon protecting and a bigger emphasis upon prevention, which will be working with our fellow agencies to solve some problems. We will keep a dialogue running about that, Tim.
Yep,
as time comes on, we're very confident about the next couple of years, so plenty of time to plan for it, and we look forward to continuing to serve you. So I'll hand over to Matt now for a much more important local picture.
Thank you. There's quite a lot of faces here, I know, in the audience, so thank you for coming tonight. Just like to introduce my new boss, Superintendent Andrew Mason, Western Area Commander, who's here as well this evening. As Mr Passmore and the Chief said, crime is down across Suffolk, and no different here in Forest Heath. Some people love stats, statistics, some people don't. But it is clear crime is down, and I was doing a little bit of work. This is the 6th year in a row crime has fallen, certainly in Forest Heath, from a peak in 2007, 2008. We've seen that same with that huge reduction, almost a quarter fewer reports of antisocial behaviour in the last year, and I think that's it's not just something I'm very proud of, but I think a lot of our partners, Crime Prevention Panel, town councils and all sorts of other agencies can be very proud of. One of the biggest success stories over the last couple of years in Forest Heath is definitely Brandon. Against the 3-year average, which is how we usually measure ourselves against, the average of the previous 3 years, crime in Brandon is down by 30%. That's almost a third, which is an incredible amount. And I was at a town council meeting recently, and I think the chair, Mr Sylvester, who's here, asked me, well, why don't they feel any safer? And I think that is certainly a challenge for myself, for my officers, and a challenge for our partners and those of you from the town council. I did say, enlist your help really in getting the message out. People really are safer than they've been in a long time. We are 3 Safer Neighbour teams, one here in Brandon, one in Mildenhall, one in Newmarket. Each quarter we gather a load of different information. We take the information from emails, from Twitter, social media. We take the antisocial behaviour and crime reports. And we take the information that we've got from public meetings. We present it to the the Crime Prevention Panel, and they independently set our priorities for the next 3 months after satisfying themselves that we've achieved our priorities for the preceding 3 months. It is a way that most of my colleagues across the force, inspectors at my level, are very envious of. And I'll be honest, I would like to improve the way that we gather that information. I'd like to see more people at some of our public meetings, just the local meetings, setting priorities. And that's the challenge that I've got 2 new sergeants, one starting in Brandon in the next few weeks. We're going to sit down and come up with some ideas to get more people along to those priority gathering meetings. As you can see, a wide variety of local issues, many following, with dealing with perhaps antisocial behaviour linked to the top one. For example, there's an unofficial youth club there in Jubilee Road. We've had some reports of antisocial behaviour, and that's something we'll be looking to tackle over the next 3 months. I talked about the joint working, and it's evident in just a little snapshot there. I was putting information on this slide, and I'll be honest, I could have put dozens and dozens of little snippets of information about how we work with our partners. Really proud of the new Brandon Centre, which I'm sure those who in Brandon will know. It was interesting, I was talking to one of our front desk clerks, police inquiry officer, and he's been stamping out library books. And it means as well that when we haven't got a member of staff on the library front desk, those library staff have got had a bit of training about to signpost people in the right direction. So it's not open very much when I say we haven't got a front desk clerk there that often, because there's not the demand for it. But when they're not there, there's certainly someone there who can help. And that's really been a bonus, working so closely with our partners. There's a preschool there, they've really got to know the officers. It's been a real success story. Successful drugs raid, some of you might have seen the papers. Just last week, there's a picture of one of my sergeants hammering a board over an address in Newmarket, which we'd successfully secured a court order to close up the address because of the antisocial behaviour linked to Class A drug dealing. So that's something we're really pleased with. And there's other bits and pieces on there, and I'm pleased to announce that we'll be working with the in Forest Heath Suffolk County Council, and they're willing to part fund or match fund a PCSO to work predominantly in Newmarket College down Newmarket, which is good news. Mr. Passmore mentioned specials, absolutely right. We are so fortunate in here in Forest Heath. We've got some really committed people. Special constables in Forest Heath, obviously a relatively small district compared with some of the others in Suffolk. Our specials contribute 10% of the entire hours that specials contribute across Suffolk. So it just shows how hard they work, and I did make a joke earlier about being ready to hug them when they turn up on a Friday night, because we're pleased to see them. They really did help us out. Having said that, they worked National Specials Weekend. They chose to hold it here in the district, and a group of dozens of specials worked with Customs and the Vehicle Standards Agency to run a joint operation. And a quick plug, we are actively looking for special constables within Forest Heath. If you'd like to cut, if you know someone, if you fancy it yourself, you can find information on our website. And just finally, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but a lot of people communicate now by social media. We in Forest Heath Police are really proud of our Twitter account. We use it to put bits of information which you wouldn't necessarily come across. It's more stuff about our day-to-day work, what we're up to, and even bits of traffic news. If we're dealing with an accident, we'll tell you. So I'd encourage you to perhaps have a look at our Twitter account. As you can see, we've got almost 1,000 people who are able to see the tweet the moment we put it on, and we've got all sorts on there, and we've been quite creative to try and make it interesting. So I please encourage you to keep up to date with what we're up to via our Twitter account. That's it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, now the programme is over to you, ladies and gentlemen, so you can ask any question you like, and I think there will be. Sandra's going to bring a roving mic round. So if you just want to indicate, and then please ask your question, and we come right up to the front. Thank you.
Thank you. Ever so surprised to hear what you said tonight. I've been attending Brandon Town Council meetings for the last 8 months, and for the first 5 we never saw any police at all. The last 3 months we have had 1 sergeant and a couple of PCSOs. Now the priority from SNT, there hasn't been one in Brandon for the last year. It's all been Lake and Heath, nothing in this town. In fact, the council, Brandon Town Council, have now taken seats out so that the old can't sit down during the day, because it's easier for them to not have to clear up the litter, not have to deal with the antisocial behaviour. So they are now taking out seats because they don't get a response. As I say, being there, it's really opened my eyes. I've been reporting about it in a local paper, but it's something that we keep hearing that this is happening, and we are not seeing anything in Brandon. It's happening in Lakenheath, but we get nothing here.
Okay.
I wondered why.
Right, well, thank you very much for that question. Now, are you going to deal with it, Matt or Douglas? That's quite an important point for the people of Brandon.
Absolutely. You're dead right. We weren't going to town council meetings for all sorts of reasons that I'm not going to go into. But it's only right we should be there. And that's why I've sat down with Mr. Sylvester and agreed the return of the police to those meetings, because we should be there. You're absolutely right. I attended the AGM, the annual meeting myself, and if I'm not available, I'll ensure that one of my staff does go. So you're dead right, we should have been there. We weren't, we are now. The priority setting, we produce a report for the crime prevention panel. We take into account a variety of information from loads of different sources, including calls into us, for them to choose our priority. You're right, there hasn't been one for Brandon for a little while, but you've got to, those meetings are going on, but I don't think they've been publicised very well, and that's something I absolutely take on board. We've got to do better. However, as you can see, Brandon has been the real success story in Forest Heath. My staff and the priorities are set where they're needed most, and at the moment, because of how well Brandon's been doing, it hasn't been Brandon. But things are considered for Brandon. Brandon isn't just ignored. There's representatives from Brandon on that panel. I think there's members of the Brandon Town Council attend the panel as well. All I'd say is antisocial behaviour reports we take really seriously. If you've got people who've had to, this is the first I've heard of it, had to move a bench because of antisocial behaviour surrounding it, please, just they should be calling us on 101. My PCSOs are really well known in the town. I get loads of feedback. They see us, people see them every day. Stop them, tell them, and we'll certainly take it on board, because we're there to help, and we will help.
Well, I'm publicising the 101 in the magazine, but there's a communications problem. Brandon Town Council are saying we're reporting these things. The police are saying it's not on the computer. Somebody is not telling the truth. I don't know who, but I know I go to the meetings, the town clerk informs us and the council that the reports have been put in, but nothing is done. And when the police are spoken to, they say it's never been reported. It seems awfully strange.
We log every single call. Before I worked in Brandon, I worked in the control room for 2.5 years, and we do log every single call. So, if there's issues, we want to know about them, we want to deal with them, I can assure you.
Thank you very much.
Just add on to that, Matt has given a pleasure to take away and look at it, and I'll ask Matt if you kindly just keep us copied in. That is part of my responsibility. If you're not getting what you want, please let us know, and we will take it right in at the top. So that's there for all of you, not just Brandon Town Council, anybody. I think Eddie was next.
Yeah, just wanted to say you didn't put in your presentation. I'm a member of the Suffolk Crime Panel, and our job is scrutiny. We scrutinise you and by association the police. And that panel works very hard to make sure that your priorities that you've set are correct, your financial acumen is correct, and that the police team is correct. You didn't mention that. The second point I want to make is Hello?
That's better. We're all ears, Eddie.
The second point I want to make is just to add to what Roy just told you. As you know, years ago I used to check, and I brought this up on the actual Suffolk Crime Panel to both of you, and I've had a response from Inspector Rose, which I did understand. We used to have regular meetings in Brandon, which I used to publicise through a magazine here. We had a phenomenal response, the same in Beckrow, the same in Lakenheath. And that's changed. And I told you on the phone that it's unsatisfactory because as a councillor, people keep stopping me and saying, when's the next meeting? And I can't even tell them because I don't know. Now that may be a communications problem, but it's very serious because Brandon people have a right to come to these meetings, but they're not going to go to Millwall, they're certainly not going to go to Newmarket. They're going to come here. Now whenever these meetings are being held, and where they're being held, I'd love to know, being as I am on the crime panel, and I run a youth group, youth detective group, and I wouldn't say I get much support with that either. This detective group starts at 9 years old and it goes upwards, and we're teaching them. We have 3 adults who've all been connected with the police one way or another. One was actually an area commander of specials, and that particular gentleman has phenomenal knowledge, and we pass it on to the children. What we teach them is what you can't give them in schools. We teach them community safety and all sorts of things that will help them. What I'm trying to say is I'm agreeing with Roy that what he says is absolutely true. But I will say Brandon's very lucky. What you said I agree with. We don't have very major crime here. The worst thing that's ever happened here was a rape, which was solved very quickly, which I thought was tremendous. And I'm not knocking the police because I think you guys do a fantastic job. I've worked for the police. I've worked in Thetford, so I know. But the crime panel, I just wanted to tell people, probably don't know we exist. We are a scrutiny panel. So they come, both of these gentlemen come to every one of our meetings, and we do talk to them, and they do listen. So I just wanted to praise you up, if you like, that you do listen. But this business, what Roy's raised, hasn't been resolved. I'm sorry what you say, but it's wrong. And I'm getting fed up with telling people I don't know when the meetings are. There's no meetings in Brandon that I know of. You can prove me wrong. So I just wanted to agree with my colleague here. Thank you.
No, anyway, we've got that on board. We'll get that put right. And thank you for the comments about the panel. I could just say, ladies and gentlemen, I had a 2.5-hour grilling non-stop from all 15 of them when it came to the budget setting. And they do on your behalf. What some people are anxious, how do you hold a police and crime commissioner to account? Well, have a word with Eddie, and I think he'll give you a 2.5-hour meeting as well. So, but no, it is important because that is part of the process. You know, we froze the budget this year and last year, which is there's only 2 police and crime commissioners done that. It's not been doing it deliberately, but there was actually no need to put taxes up for this year. But that isn't to say that we wouldn't do it in the future either. But they do honestly go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And I felt exhausted after that, but never mind. There we go. Anyway, Bill.
Thank you very much. Have you noticed there's quite a lot of traffic in Brandon? Well, I'll tell you, I get an awful lot of complaints about illegal parking. It would be very helpful if we see somebody on the beat now and again to help with that illegal parking. And there's an area, and I've got a plan which I should give you after the meeting, where they park and it's absolutely terrible. But I have to agree with Eddie, you are Eddie, aren't you? Yeah, about the meeting, because I used to go to them and it's invaluable to get that connection between the local public and the police. And I agree with him that you're doing a splendid job. And I think the specials do very well as well.
No, thanks so much for that. That's obviously an operation issue. Parking does come up, I think, at nearly all the public meetings. So there we are, Matt, another curve one for you.
Thanks again, and this was something that the Town Council mentioned to me when I was at the meeting just a few weeks ago. Can you hear me now? This was something that we mentioned at the meeting just at the Town Council just a few weeks ago, and there was a question from the public. Yes, a very emotive issue. And certainly, if you come across parking, certainly if you're blocked in, if it's causing obstruction, if they're parked on the curb and the pavement and you can't get past, please call us on 101. We'll be down there as soon as we can, but we are out there. We are issuing tickets. I know we're issuing tickets because I get complaints from people who are issuing tickets. So you know, I get it from both sides, but. Please just call us and make us aware, and we'll do our best to resolve it.
Can I add something to what I just said? That it's a fantastic view for where your police force is in the High Street. But some of them would like to pair the lockers so they can help you see that.
Take the point. Thank you very much. Who'd like to go next? Yes, at the back there. Yeah.
Jeff Hughes, Town Council and the Crime Prevention Panel for the District. If I'd like to take up the point about the seat on the load, it was taken away not because of the antisocial behaviour, but because it was broken. And it was going to be very, very expensive to replace it. That was said at the meeting by, I believe, Mr. Sylvester. The other point is that I have to concur that I brought up this business about how come we haven't got any priorities for Brandon, and they said categorically it's not been reported. People in Brandon know there are irritations, especially with the migrant population who are sleeping rough. If you don't tell anybody, they can't log it. That's the only point I want to make. You tell the police, they will deal with it.
I'd just like to comment on that, and I think Douglas mentioned it is so important that you do report crimes and things you're fed up with. You know, those old Pelian principles, the public are the police and the police and the public. We've got to get rid of this cynicism in society that nothing matters, it doesn't count, it's someone else's problem. You know, we know we've got to pull together, we've got financial challenges, it's not a stuck record on that, but actually if you report it, actually want people to report more and more crime or problems, then these guys will deal with it. If they don't know or don't hear, yes, we can improve communications, we'll all help to do that, and sorry if that hasn't quite got through, we'll make sure we do something on that, we've got that on board, it's really important we do that. So we'll work at that, but please make sure you come forward. And if you've got anything else, I'll leave my card so you can always contact me direct, I'll leave them here now, just to prove I'm not putting a fast one. But please feel free to do it, it's really important we hear about it. So who'd like to go next? Over here, we'll come all, yes, and then we'll come back round there.
Thank you very much. Yes, good evening. Brian Harvey. I'm the chair of the Crime Prevention Panel itself. As Matt has rightly said, and one or two other colleagues are on the panel as well, we carry out quite a rigorous review of the information that's been presented to us. And even at the last quarterly meeting, which was held in May, we asked again about Brandon. It was brought up about Brandon. And it's only the information that's being reported, either 101 or 999s, that's coming forward. We can't set priorities on the fact that people say that something is happening without the police having carried out the investigation. Because we're not only injecting priorities into the police and its operation, it's linking in to Forest Heath, the community partnerships, and other partnerships in the area. Because when they actually task the organisations, they're taking those priorities forward. The reason that at the moment you've got priorities in Newmarket linked up with the drugs is because we've got all the information back. Mildenhall and Red Lodge over the robberies and burglaries of vehicle crimes, because we got that information back. And I would say to all the councillors here and everybody inside, I can't answer the question about the town meetings or the police local community publicity, and I'm sure Matt will be able to sort that out. But unless we get the information in, we can't do anything about it. Okay?
No, that's an absolutely vital point. And the other thing to reiterate, ladies and gentlemen, dealing with crime reduced demand is not just down to the police. We've all got a responsibility, but other areas like mental health, look at the probation service, rehabilitation of offenders and so on. There is a huge amount to do. What we do not need is more of the same. It costs a fortune. And if you think, I think it's something like 60% of offenders re-offend in the first year. That system is not working. It costs a fortune. We've got to try new ways, and we've all got to have a responsibility to do that. And we're certainly up over here. We want to do that. So please keep that information coming, and we will act on it. I don't want to come back here in 12 months' time and get an earful because nothing's changed. I can promise you, none of us want that. We just don't. David.
Yes. Could I just remind the good people of Brandon that it's a Brandon SNT. That Brandon SNT covers Westrow, Sedge Fen. Now Westrow I think is about 7-8 miles away. So if meetings are being held, yes, Brandon's the hub, but the people of Westrow, Beckrow, Sedge Fen all want their say as well. And I think this is one of the biggest problems you've got, because it is a huge area that's being covered. And I fully understand the frustrations. I live at Holywell Road, and if I want to come to a meeting, I have to come to Brandon, whereas Mildenhall Police Station is a mile up the road.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problems as far as I'm concerned. To me, Brandon's nearly in Norfolk. No
I don't think they'd say that here. You might get taken out and excommunicated. Go on in, Eddie, yeah.
Firstly, when we used to run the meetings, let's clarify something. When we used to run the meetings, we'd run one in Brandon, and then the following one would be in Lake and Heath. The following one would be in Beck Row. They were well advertised. We kept spreading them around. We got good results from every single meeting. That's all changed now.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about Brandon. We used to run them where you're talking about. We used to run them in Lake and Heath. We had a village hall there, or actually the social club, was packed. They're not happening now. How many times have I got to say it? I said it at the crime panel. They're not happening now. I'm not talking about priorities.
Yeah.
You talked about priorities earlier. We're not talking about priorities. We're talking about the ability of Brandon people, Lake and Heath people, Beck Row people, Holywell Row people to walk into a meeting locally, and I don't say that lightly, and then give their views. And when we had these meetings, you always had the sergeant and myself chairing it, and they were, and the county council, which was Will Bishop at the time, and we got through an awful lot of information. Things, you said about people not reporting crime. We got things there that weren't being reported. I don't know why it was changed. It's a bad system. It's nothing to do with communication. Look into it.
We are, and it will be. That is a promise. Anybody else over here?
I don't want to come back on that. I'd like to go on a completely different tack.
Fine. Let's do that.
The area is due for some substantial developments in the future in the way of housing. What concerns me is that if I wanted to buy myself a new car, it would be fitted up with all sorts of security devices. If I want to buy a new house in the area, what security devices are going to be put into these houses to make the house itself safe and the people that are going to live in it are safe as well, i.e. alarm systems. And of course, one of the biggest problems that have come up regarding Red Lodge is there is not the space for security services to get to events, a fire or anything like that. Years ago, the constabulary had a planning department. I believe there were architects involved with it. We used to look at plans from the constabulary point of view. Is that still in?
Still there.
Because I do believe that there's a really good opportunity going to be missed. I look at places like Red Lodge, huge developments there. And, are they cutting costs by not installing suitable security?
Yeah. Well, let Douglas answer that. But it is a serious point, but that's happened elsewhere, not just in Brandon, I can assure you.
I couldn't believe the change in Red Lodge when I came back. I remember coming through in traffic cars years ago, and when the officers took me out of patrol perhaps a few months ago, the explosion in the population, and you're right, it's a tight development. Now, the upside is that, David, we absolutely still run a system called Secured by Design. I know we do, because the Chief Constable has to sign off a development as having met the Secured by Design standards set nationally by the Association of Chief Police Officers, and it certifies that that design and the build has met today's security standards. Good for the service, good for the residents, good for keeping criminality down. We just need to keep insisting through that planning process that new developments are secured by design. I think the other thing we need to keep an eye on is that developers should be making a contribution to local public services. Used to call it 106, didn't we? So it's still 106. So we've got a colleague who works at headquarters working with the planning departments to make sure that we draw in that contribution wherever it's necessary. There are some amazing things happening across the county. If I look closer towards headquarters, Martlesham, potentially going to be the 4th biggest town in the county from very humble origins as a result of an explosion in new housing. I think we're on it, David. Always more that we can do, but I think you'd be quite reassured by the rigour of the approach.
Okay, gentleman at the back, and then we'll come over this side.
Hello, Stu Walker, resident of Brandon. My big thing is cyclists. It says in the highway code they shouldn't ride on pavements, but here they ride across red lights, they ride up and down pavements. I've nearly been knocked down twice. I'm a pretty fit lad, but some of the older people, I would imagine, not quite as sprightly, will struggle to get out of the way of them. You come round a blind corner. It doesn't seem to be policed. Can somebody give me some information, please?
Right, it's obviously operational, but that's not the first time it's come up. What do you think about that,
Matt? Thanks for that report. Now, I don't work in Brandon every day, but it's one of the first times I've heard about problems with cycling in Brandon.
It seems to be the norm that everybody rides on pavements. It's rare to see somebody riding on the road.
Yeah. I'm a keen cyclist myself, and I get equally frustrated by people, cyclists jumping red lights, etc. That's certainly something I can take back to my SNT and ask them to keep an eye on that. We do have powers to issue tickets for cycling on the pavement, cycling through red lights, so we can certainly look at some enforcement, and perhaps I'll put something on Twitter about it. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And just for your information, ladies and gentlemen, we are recording all the questions down here, and we will be following them all up, so it won't get lost. Don't worry. That's fine. Lady here, please.
It's not a question, more a statement. I want to back Eddie up because I'm chairman of Brandon Neighbourhood Watch and also on the crime prevention panel. Now, we put out notices every 3 months, sorry. And we get feedback from these. We get people who phone us, we get people who come and say things to us, and so on and so forth. We tell them to report these crimes. Sometimes they don't, so we report them. And we used to go to Eddie's meetings. I used to go as a Neighbourhood Watch representative, and things are passed on. I mean, I do pass them on at the crime prevention panel now, but I have to endorse Eddie's meetings because they were very good, and we got a lot of people coming in and a lot of things were said about them. Okay?
Okay, well, thank you for that. We've got that down. I think the message is loud and clear on that. So, as I say, I wouldn't dream of coming back here. None of us would in ears and getting our ears chewed off about that. So that will be dealt with, promise you.
And to my really just appreciate the work done through the Neighbourhood Watch Association. What a fantastic resource for local communities, but also a key partner for the constabulary. So thank you.
Good. We're coming all the way up to the front then. There we go. Thank you, Sandra.
Excuse me, not staying.
We will definitely excuse
It's a bit difficult.
No, that's right. Fine.
I'd just like to touch on a couple of things that have been raised tonight. Firstly, the seating at the load. Those chairs were damaged, dangerous, and the town clerk, of her own accord, had them removed under health and safety.
Yep.
But at the last council meeting, and by the way, I'd like to remind people that a seat costs £400 without the fitting and putting it together. So 2 seats, a lot of money. But the council has resolved to provide seating there again. Sorry it's a bit slow, but that's the way councils work. We only do 1 day a month.
Put that down. Yeah. So put that in the book as well. Right.
The other thing is the perception of crime. I think the perception of crime remains the same because of the population in Brandon is predominantly elderly, or more elderly than you might find elsewhere. And they don't come out in the evenings unless you give them good reason. And the town council are now sponsoring several functions during the year to try and persuade people to come out into the town, and that way they will realise that, yeah, it's not a bad place, it's quite safe, we can go down the Market Hill on a Sunday and what have you. And the other thing is, I just had a couple of gripes about, since you've moved out of the old police station and you're now leaving the new centre, some people are saying we don't see the police officers walking by. Now I go to the doctor's surgery quite regularly and I noticed why. They leave in a different way. They leave and they cross the Berry Road and they probably go up George Street, so the centre of town doesn't see the officers that it used to see leaving the old police centre, which you had on the corner. It's just a tiny little thing, but if you just take the trouble to think about it and walk the other way occasionally, it might help.
Good point.
I think
Visibility.
that's about all I've got.
Okay, well, I think it's a very nice, pleasant, practical point that you can easily deal with. Yeah, and that, visibility is something people are concerned about. We all are, so that's absolutely
Well, I
fine.
leave round Lode Street, not Lode Street, what's the little road round the back of the... Store Street, actually. That's
Store
what I think
Street,
at
yeah.
the moment. And of course, the other way they leave from the car park and go up George Street or Ferry Road. So the town centre doesn't see them.
Okay, good. Anybody else got a question they wish to raise? Lady at the back there.
I'm Sunia, I'm just a resident. But what I would like to say is that you said your crime rate is down. Well, I would suggest that it's mainly due to one PCSO who makes herself prominent. So if I have something that I'm a bit concerned about, it's probably not crime, but it might, I suppose, lead on to crime or something I'm not happy about. Because she's an approachable person, then I would go and tell her that. It's not urgent, it waits till I see her next. But because she walks around and I see her... Now, I see other PCSOs, and they're not speaking to people, and she tells me that there's about 6. Well, I can only say I only ever see 2. I don't see anybody else. And I do walk up and down, and I'm a local resident, so I'd just like to point that out. That might be perhaps one of the reasons why crime's reducing, because people go and talk to somebody who's about, should we say.
Engagement, speaking to whoever it is really important. Got any say on that, Matt?
Absolutely, I get some really favourable feedback about some of the PCSOs on Brandon SNT, and I saw the Chief nodding there as well, because I think you both know exactly who you're talking about. There's a few people there. All I'd say is each of the PCSOs has, their Brandon SNT, but they do have specific areas. So some of those PCSOs, their job, they come on duty, they will jump in a car or get a lift out to some of the rural villages and Lake and Heath and the Rose. So you might not, you probably won't see them in Brandon because they're covering the rest of what was pointed out, quite a large area. But thank you for that feedback, it's really good.
And I'm sure the constabulary really welcome positive feedback. I know you do, and it's very pleasing for me to hear it on your behalf. And obviously, thank you guys for all that. Anybody else got a question, or you? Yeah, over. Oh, one more here. Then we'll come to you, George.
Is the traffic going to reduce? Because where I live, there are very heavy lorries come round the corner, and I'm worried about the house. The lorries are getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. I'm not sure you have an awful lot of control over that, do you?
Well, it's interesting because I don't think any of us know what the effects will be when they fully reopen the A11. And I think that's one of those things. I think I've seen an increase in Mildenhall and, because of the delays in the A11. So I think that's one of those things. We'll wait until the A11 opens, see what the impact is, and if we're still getting problems, perhaps we'll work with the county council around restrictions of weights and things we can do that.
It was a relief road.
Another one.
That's kind of bypass, not a relief road.
Yeah.
Because the traffic's built up all the way down George Street and around.
Yeah, and if the crossing's down, that really impacts the town.
Yes, I can remember that as well.
Can I just say something about what the lady has said?
Okay, yeah.
The A11 at the moment is partially open.
Yeah.
But our concern in Brandon is when it's opened in full and is really a through route, really, where the traffic can move, we are concerned that a lot of the traffic that's going to the North Norfolk coast, i.e. the lorries and mainly, are going to go along the A11, and if they're coming through to get to Swaffham and Fakenham, they're going to come down the Bury Road and round the one-way system, which is not designed to take traffic from that area. So you will notice a bit of relief down the London Road, but bigger problems on the Bury Road. We have taken it to the County Council, but I'm sad to say that they are reactive and not proactive. So they won't do anything until they've got a problem.
Perhaps we can keep in touch on that, because I have always believed that it's far better to be proactive and not wait till you have a problem. And if you need any support for that, I'm happy to help stick the boot in. Yeah, just quickly, then we need to cover the job.
Really quickly.
Yeah.
Years ago, we had a Brandon Action Group whose job it was to try and get a bypass for Brandon. And although we proved our case, sadly it wasn't going to happen. And at that period of time, we had a survey done by the Road Haulage Association and a group called Roads to Prosperity. And their remit was to look at the A11 and see what effect that they thought from their experience would be on Brandon. What they told us, no effect whatsoever, and I believe that. I think when that's finished, we're still going to have a problem. And if we have all the houses built that are so-called being planned, we're really going to have a problem.
Just a little tip on that before we go to John. One thing you can do when that's happened, if you've got a big issue like that with Road Haulage Association, come back to us at the business forum and so on, and we'll take it up there. There is a mechanism for doing that.
One of the words that was used early on has been used only once for the last 20 minutes, was communications. I'm just talking about Milton Hall now, because this is and the police with Milton Hall, and I have colleagues here who know what we're talking about. The police don't get away with anything in Milton Hall, not in Milton Hall, but in the council. Because if they're not there, we write a letter, right, to say, can we please have a report? Now, I will speak also on behalf of a small parish south of Milton Hall, which I was chairman for 2 years. We need a report if the officer cannot come. And with great respect, if the officer says, I'm not on duty today, so I couldn't send a report, that ain't good enough. Because that's the one opportunity in that case, in only 2 or 3 months, to have a parish council meeting, and you have 15 people, 12 people in the audience having a moan at the council, and there's no policeman there to make any answers. I think, in fairness, we would say that we are well served in Milton Hall by officers and PCSOs. We really think. But it doesn't cut any ice to hear, this month we've given 33 tickets instead of 30. They really ought to be putting out possibly 63, 83. That sounds cruel. But the point was made about whether you can do something about cyclists, whether you can do something about cars, whether you can do something about parking. It's got to be seen to be done. I think that's the thing. Yep. And those of us who try to have, we do have a Milton Hall sessions where the public come to us, we know what it's like. Sometimes people don't come. But boy, they come sometimes, and when they do, we do hear all about it, and we let you know that way.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely very, very true, that communication, and I'm sure, Matt, you'll take that back. If someone can't be there, then you need a report, because otherwise people are unsatisfied, and that's not what it's about. It's not on.
Can I just check?
Yeah.
John, did you mean a written report? You know, a well-constructed written report would be helpful?
Well, yes. Clearly, they know it's not a question of numbers. So many thieving this, thank you. So many thieving, so many burglaries and so on. That's not the point. It's to be there to be able to say to the questioner from the council, who's had it literally maybe that same afternoon, there's this problem, can you do it? Now, I'll be blunt, you've talked about a lady PCSO here. We've got one man in Milton Hall, great guy. I've known him since he was 3. He's fantastic, the things that he does, seriously. But when he comes, he listens. And we do have, and David knows this, and his wife, we have the meetings of the highways, and he comes, and he listens, and he goes back, and I hope he does, he asks you questions, and he comes back, and at the moment he's dealing with my own street, with parking. And we see the work being done. And that is another form of communication which is vital. Somebody talked about seeing the police. Yes, let's see them, the PCCOs, and let's get the written report.
Okay, that's all taken on board. John, thank you very much indeed. Anybody else got anything else to say? David, 3rd time.
Sorry, yes.
I was going to overrule it, but I wouldn't be so cruel.
Thank you very much. The biggest problem I feel with rural crime is most of the people who are suffering it are my age group. I have neighbours and fellow farmers, and they will say, what's the point? This time of year, irrigators, diesel fuel, batteries, this sort of thing. I was reading recently where there's a system in East Yorkshire where the constabulary up there have said, it's no use talking to those old fogies, let's talk to their kids and grandkids. And let's do it via Twitter. because we need to know what's happening. I don't know if you're aware of this scheme that's going. I've read a little bit about it, and to my mind, it's no use me coming up there. Let's have our grandchildren, or our children, because they're the ones that are going to talk to each other and say, last night we had that tractor had its diesel tank emptied.
And that's why we do Crucial Crew, isn't it? That's
basically
just an expansion of that.
It's an expansion of that. And I believe if you could develop that sort of idea, you would not only help the rural community, because you'd get to know what's happening to them, I think also within the urban side as well, it could have a lot going for it.
No, I think that's a very well made point. You've obviously got your Twitter account for us, Heath, we do that. On the Rural Crime Network, I've got a meeting in York tomorrow for the major launch of the PCC areas that have signed up for the National Rural Crime Network. We're in it, Norfolk isn't, but that's up to them. And it's very, very important. We're looking at all sorts of things like that. There's going to be some funding support for it from other agencies like the NFU, CLA, Countryside Alliance and so on, because everybody is aware of needing to find ways to communicate, be it physically being there, Twitter. I actually don't care how we do it as long as we do it. So I hope we'll be seeing some difference soon in supporting these guys and what they're doing. We are definitely all in this together.
Mr. Pannant, I think the name is.
Right.
Where was it, David? Was it East
Yorkshire?
Yorkshire?
East Yorkshire. Mr. Pannant was a Met officer who went to East Yorkshire, and I think he's running this side. I don't know the details, so I'm a little bit patient.
Okay, good. Anyone else? The last chance. Yeah, gentleman there. That's all you've got.
Bob Gooch, I come from Icklingham. I want to ask Matthew, you've got a Twitter account, but who actually operates the account? If somebody tweets to you, to Suffolk, to Police, Forest Heath, who gets it? And what do they do with it?
Essentially, it's a group of volunteers of my staff. I do it, and there's probably a couple of PCSOs in each of the SNTs. So you've got Anne-Marie here in Brandon, you've got some of the PCSOs in each of the towns, and some of our response officers as well. So usually there's somebody on. If you were to tweet us, and it's not for reporting crime or anything like that, if you were to send us a message which required an answer, we hopefully have that pretty quickly. But I think the beauty of it is frontline staff. They're not taking it, you know, you can only send messages of 140 characters or less, so these are just quick messages. You get to see what your frontline police officers are doing here in Forest Heath.
Okay. Anyone else? Right, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming and all the questions. That's been really, really helpful. And thank you for the team coming as well, everybody here, and to our team. Thank you, Bill, very much indeed.